For the past month, my life has revolved around a secret that isn't mine. Every night from my bedroom window, I watch my neighbor. She isn't human. And the strange, silent ceremony she performs on her balcony, it's a ritual of grief for a love she lost somewhere across the stars. It's a dance of shimmering light and sorrowful energy that feels ancient and profound. I've become a voyeur to the most private, heartbreaking performance in the universe, and the guilt is a constant, heavy companion. But so is the fascination. I'm an aspiring astrophysicist, shackled to a desk writing grant proposals, so the mystery of her has become the focal point of my lonely life. I've documented everything. The way the air cools just before she starts, the intricate patterns of light swirling around her hands like captured nebulae, the low hum that my audio equipment can't quite capture, a sound that feels less like a vibration and more like the memory of a song. I told myself it was for science, a once-in-a-lifetime chance to observe an extraterrestrial culture, but that was a lie. I was obsessed because I was lonely, and her cosmic grief was the most beautiful, tragic thing I had ever seen. Tonight, though, everything changed. I was leaning a little too far out my window, trying to get a clearer reading on a new energy signature, a faint, pulsing emerald green I hadn't seen before. My camera's telephoto lens was focused, my breath held, and in that moment, she stopped. The lights froze, the hum died. She turned her head, and her eyes, large and the color of liquid silver, locked right onto mine. No glass, no distance, no hiding. She saw me. My heart hammered against my ribs in pure panic. I expected anger, fear, maybe even a laser beam. Instead, after a long moment that stretched into eternity, she gave a slow, deliberate nod, not at my window, but toward her own front door. It was an invitation, and as I stand here now, my hand hovering over my own doorknob, I know my quiet, predictable life is already over. The only question is what happens next. Before she showed up, my life was a perfectly curated exercise in solitude. My name is Dr. Aris Thorne, though the doctor part feels more like a souvenir from a past life than who I am now. My days were a monotonous loop. Wake up, run simulations of stellar nurseries, write grant proposals that were always rejected, and eat nutrient paste that tasted like disappointment. My small, sterile apartment was less a home and more a holding cell, where I waited for my real life, the one among the stars, to begin. The view of Sector 7's urban sprawl was my only real connection to the outside world. Loneliness was my roommate, and we had a comfortable arrangement. Then, 3 months ago, the apartment across the courtyard was sold. The moving process for the new tenant was weird. No rumbling trucks, no cheerful movers. Instead, large, seamless black crates just appeared in the dead of night, hovering silently from some unseen transport high above. They phased right through the walls of the apartment, leaving no mark. I watched from the dark of my living room as a half-dozen of these silent containers were delivered. The only sound was a low thrumming that seemed to vibrate in my bones, a deep note that faded as quickly as it came. I didn't see her for the first 2 weeks. I just knew the apartment was occupied. The windows, once clear, now held a faint pearlescent shimmer. At night, a soft violet light pulsed gently from within, its rhythm slow and steady like a sleeping heart. I'd try to work, but my eyes would always drift across the courtyard, my mind racing. The city registry listed the occupant as just Lyra. No last name, no point of origin, just Lyra. My first glimpse of her was brief, almost dreamlike. She stepped onto her balcony, a silhouette against the strange violet glow. She was tall, impossibly slender, with a grace that seemed to defy gravity. She just stood there, looking up at the smoggy sky, at the few stars that managed to pierce the city's light pollution. Even from a distance, I could tell she wasn't human. Her skin had a faint silvery sheen, and her dark hair seemed to float around her head, as if caught in a personal, unfelt breeze. The ritual started about a month after she moved in.
It was always at the dead of night, when the city was at its quietest. She'd step onto her balcony, and the very air would change. A stillness would descend, the distant hum of traffic fading to nothing. Then she would raise her hands. Motes of light, golds, blues, deep crimsons would drift from her palms, swirling into complex holographic shapes. Sometimes they looked like star charts of unknown constellations. Other times they depicted graceful figures in a silent ballet. The centerpiece was always a single brilliant point of white light that she'd conjure in the center of the motes of light. She would cradle it, her head bowed, her entire being focused on this tiny star. There was no sound, but I could feel the emotion radiating from her, a wave of profound, soul-crushing grief so powerful it made my own chest ache. It was a lament, a eulogy written in light. I started recording it all, my scientific curiosity providing the perfect cover for my growing obsession. I set up my most sensitive equipment, angling microphones and spectral analyzers toward her balcony. I was a thief, stealing glimpses of her private sorrow. I learned the phases of the ritual, the gathering, where she summoned the motes of light I came to believe were memories, the focus, where she conjured the central white light, the essence of the one she'd lost, and the release, where the light would fracture into 1,000,000 pieces and drift away, leaving her standing alone, the picture of cosmic desolation. Night after night, I watched. I abandoned my research, my grant proposals, my entire life just to be a spectator to her pain. The loneliness that had once defined me was replaced by a different kind of ache, a shared, second-hand sorrow for a stranger from another world. My quiet life had been breached, not by a sound, but a silent, heartbreakingly beautiful secret. And I knew, even before she saw me, that I could never go back.
My feet felt like lead as I crossed the courtyard. Each step was a cannon blast in the silence. The 20 yards between my door and hers felt like a solar system to traverse. What do you even say to the alien neighbor you've been spying on? Sorry for the intrusion, but your grief is aesthetically pleasing? My heart was a trapped bird fluttering against my ribs. I reached her door, a smooth, featureless black slab, and hesitated. No bell, no knocker. I raised my hand, but before I could knock, the door slid open with a whisper. She stood there, bathed in the soft, violet light from inside. Up close, she was even more striking. The silver sheen on her skin was real, mixed with faint bioluminescent patterns that swirled like ink in water. Her liquid silver eyes held an unnerving depth, like they saw not just me, but the history of my atoms. "Dr. Aris Thorne," she said. Her voice wasn't spoken, it was projected, a series of soft, melodic tones that translated themselves inside my head, completely bypassing my ears. It was both beautiful and deeply unsettling. You know my name," I stammered, feeling like a kid caught with his hand in the cookie jar. "I know the name this world gives you," she corrected gently. "I've been aware of your watching for some time. Please, come in." She stepped aside. The air that washed over me from her apartment was warm and humid, smelling of damp earth, night-blooming flowers, and something clean and metallic, like the air after a thunderstorm. I stepped inside, and the door slid shut behind me. I wasn't in a Sector 7 apartment anymore. I was in another world. The interior was a breathtaking biodome. The ceiling was a perfect replica of a night sky I'd never seen, dominated by 2 large, luminous moons. Strange, glowing plants grew in sculpted planters, casting shifting patterns of blue and green light. A small, tranquil pool of water reflected the moons above. The air hummed with a gentle, life-giving energy. It was a pocket of her home, carved out of the concrete and steel of my world. "You have questions," Lyra stated, her silver eyes studying my awestruck face. Yeah, a few million," I managed. "I'm sorry for watching. It was an invasion of your privacy. I'm an astrophysicist, and I
I couldn't help myself. She gestured to a set of low chairs that seemed to have grown right out of the floor. Curiosity isn't a crime, Aris. Neither is empathy. I didn't sense the cold gaze of a scientist. I sensed a resonance, a shared quietness. It's why I never shielded my balcony from you. We sat, and the chair molded itself to my form. "What is it?" I asked, finally voicing the question that had consumed me for weeks. "The ritual?" Her expression softened. "It is called the Rite of Echoes. It is how my people mourn. When a life is extinguished, a memory imprint remains, an echo of their consciousness in space-time. The one I mourn, my bonded, his name was Kale." The name fell into my mind with a weight of love and loss that was staggering. I saw a flash, not a picture but a feeling. Soaring speed, joyous laughter that chimed like crystal, a hand held tight in hers as they watched a nebula bloom. "She was a star dancer," she continued, her gaze drifting to the double moons above. "An explorer. Our vessel was our home. We chartered forgotten sectors, navigated gravitational rivers. We lived in the spaces between stars. The motes of light you see are crystallized memories. The white light, that is Kale's echo." She paused. "In our bond, our consciousnesses were intertwined. To lose him was to lose a part of myself. The Rite of Echoes lets me commune with his memory, to honor him, and to slowly, gently let the echo fade back into the cosmos. It's a process of saying goodbye over and over until it's complete." I was speechless, humbled by the sheer scale of her grief. My own loneliness felt so small in comparison. "But something is wrong," I said, remembering the frustration I'd seen in her movements. She met my gaze, and for the first time I saw a flicker of desperation in those silver depths. "Yes, the writ is failing. Earth's resonant frequency is dissonant, too chaotic. It's like trying to hear a whisper in a hurricane. I'm losing him, Aris, not just the memory, but the echo itself. It's unraveling, fading into static. To lose that echo before the rite is complete, it would be like he's dying a second time. It would sever our bond and leave a wound that will never heal." She leaned forward, her bioluminescent pattern swirling. "The energy I felt from you, the focused empathy, it has a unique signature, a harmonic quality. There are legends of species like yours, conduits, who can act as an anchor in dissonant worlds, beings whose emotional resonance can amplify faint cosmic signals." My blood ran cold. I knew what she was going to ask. "I'm asking you to join the rite," she said, her voice soft but firm. "To lend your consciousness as a conduit, your focus, your human heart. It could be the key to stabilizing Kale's echo. It would require you to open your mind, to bridge your consciousness with the ritual. It is a deeply intimate and potentially dangerous request." This was it, the choice. My quiet, predictable life was on one side of a chasm. On the other was this, a love that shattered galaxies, a grief that rewrote physics, and a request that could very well shatter my mind. I looked at Lyra, at the profound sorrow and desperate hope in her eyes, and I saw a reflection of my own yearning for connection. Saying no meant returning to my empty apartment, to my nutrient paste and rejected grants, knowing I'd turned my back on the most extraordinary event in human history. Saying yes meant stepping off a cliff and trusting I might learn to fly. What do I have to do?" I asked.
"You just have to feel," Lyra explained, her voice a calming current in my anxiety. "And you can't be afraid to share it. The rite needs an empathetic bridge. To anchor Kale's echo, you have to provide a foundation of your own. Share a memory of loss, a moment of joy, anything with genuine emotional weight. It will create a sympathetic vibration, allowing our minds to connect on the same frequency. My mind reeled. What did I have to offer? My grandmother's death? My childhood dog passing away? My losses felt so small, so terrestrial. But looking at the plea in her eyes, I knew I had to try. I couldn't leave her to face this alone. "I'll do it," I said, the words feeling more certain than anything I'd said in years. A wave of soft golden light washed over her skin, a silent thank you that was more potent than any words. She led me to the edge of the still pool. "Sit." We sat opposite each other, cross-legged, the dark water between us. "Close your eyes, Aris, and listen, not with your ears, but with your heart. I'll begin the gathering." I did as she asked. In the darkness behind my eyelids, I felt that familiar, profound stillness descend. Then a single pure note resonated through me, the hum I could never record, now vibrating through my soul. I could see the motes of light appearing in my mind's eye. They were more than lights. They were moments, feelings. The biting cold of a vacuum, the warmth of a red giant on my skin, the taste of air on a world where the rain fell as liquid crystal. Her memories with Kale. "Now, Aris," Lyra's voice guided me, "share something. Open the bridge." I took a shaky breath and reached back. I thought of my grandfather, the kind man who taught me the constellations from our backyard. I focused on the last time I saw him, frail in a hospital bed, and the crushing helplessness of watching his light fade. I let the grief, the love, the ache of it fill me completely. The moment I did, something shifted. The swirling lights of Lyra's memories snapped into focus. My small human grief had become a tuning fork, bringing her cosmic sorrow into a stable harmony. I felt a surge of connection to her, a shared understanding that transcended species. Then she began the focus. The central white light of Kale's echo bloomed between us. But now I didn't just see it, I was in it. Soaring through the canyons of a collapsing nebula, Kale's laughter in my mind. Standing with Lyra on a planet with a sky of pure amethyst, his arm around her. I felt the depth of their bond, an intimacy so complete they were two parts of a single soul. It was beautiful and agonizing. I was an intruder in the most sacred space imaginable, yet my presence was the only thing holding it together. But then something went wrong. A new frequency intruded, harsh, cold, and logical. The emerald green light I'd glimpsed through my camera now appeared as a jagged line of code, corrupting the symphony of memory. "What is that?" I sent the thought, our minds now connected. "A sentinel," Lyra's thought came back, laced with panic. "An ancient defense system, its dormant tech embedded in our ceremonial artifacts. It must have activated when our minds bridged. It sees your human consciousness as a contaminant. It's trying to purge you." The emerald light formed a crystalline, faceless figure. It wasn't attacking me directly. It was attacking the bridge between us. Worse, it was targeting Kale's echo, seeking to erase the corrupted data forever. The memories of Kale's life began to flicker and decay. Lyra cried out in my mind, a sound of pure agony as she fought to hold the echo together. This was the choice. I could retreat, sever the connection, and save my own mind. My quiet life was just a thought away. But if I did, Lyra would be left alone, and Kale's echo would be erased. She'd be left with a wound that would destroy her. Looking at the fracturing echo, at the memories of a love that spanned galaxies, I saw a universal truth. Love is love. Grief is grief. I would not let a soulless program delete it. My choice was made. I wasn't retreating. I was pushing back. No, I thought, the word a declaration of war. I didn't have cosmic power, but I had something the Sentinel couldn't comprehend. I stopped focusing on my grief and poured everything I was into the bridge, my stubbornness, my illogical hope, the fierce loneliness that had defined my life, now transformed into a ferocious protectiveness. I showed it the joy of a solved equation, the melancholy of a rainy Sunday, the frustration of a vending machine stealing your last dollar, the simple love for a character in a book. I bombarded it with the chaotic, beautiful mess of human emotion. The Sentinel faltered. How could joy and sorrow exist in the same memory? What was the function of hope in a scenario with a 99.9% probability of failure? My humanity was a virus in its perfect code. As it struggled to process the paradox of my existence, I pushed my consciousness forward, shielding Kale's echo. I wrapped the memory of my grandfather's kindness around the fading light of the Star Dancer. I used my own childhood dreams of space to reinforce the images of Kale soaring through the stars. The Sentinel recoiled. It couldn't compute me. It couldn't quantify me. Faced with the beautiful, illogical chaos of a human heart, the ancient program destabilized. With a final, silent shriek of corrupted data, the emerald green figure shattered into nothing. Silence. Kale's echo, now stabilized and brighter than ever, pulsed with a gentle, peaceful light. Lyra and I watched one final memory. Kale turning to her, his face alight with love, and saying her name. Then, gently, Lyra began the release. The white light fractured into a billion points of stardust, ascending into the twin moon sky, rejoining the cosmos. The Rite of Echoes was complete. And in the silent aftermath, I felt Lyra's consciousness touch mine, not with grief, but with breathtaking wonder. My eyes fluttered open. I was slumped by the pool, my body aching with a profound exhaustion. The air in the biodome was still and quiet. Across from me, Lyra was also stirring. Our hands were clasped together over the water, though I had no memory of reaching for her. The moment our eyes met, I knew everything had changed. The space between us was no longer filled with her grief or my curiosity. It was filled with a new, powerful bond forged in shared memory and psychic fire. We had walked through the most intimate corridors of her soul together. There was no going back. "You did it," she projected, her mental voice laced with awe. "The Sentinel, it has existed for millennia. It has purged threats from minds far more powerful than yours, but it's never encountered anything like you." "I just gave it something it couldn't file," I said, my voice hoarse. "It was looking for a logical threat. I just threw my junk drawer at it." A soft chiming sound echoed in my mind. It took me a moment to place it. Laughter. It was the first time I had heard her laugh, and it was the most beautiful sound in the universe. "My people value logic and emotional clarity," she explained, her thumb gently stroking my hand. "Your consciousness is beautifully chaotic. You hold grief and joy in the same thought. You weaponize hope. The Sentinel was trying to solve an equation, and you responded with poetry. It didn't stand a chance." She looked at me then, her gaze stripping away all my defenses, and my heart beat faster for a completely new reason. She wasn't looking at me like a helper, but as an equal, a marvel. I looked around the biodome, then thought of my own apartment across the courtyard. The gray walls, the humming computer, the nutrient paste. That quiet I had cultivated for so long no longer felt like peace. It felt like emptiness. The choice I'd made hadn't just been about saving Kale's echo. It was about saving myself from fading into obscurity. "He is at peace now," Lyra said softly. "The echo has returned to the stars, whole. The bond is not broken, but fulfilled. It is no longer a wound. It's a scar, a beautiful one that tells a story I can now carry with joy." She squeezed my hand. "Because of you." We stayed like that for hours, talking. She told me about her homeworld, where cities were grown like forests. She described the taste of sun-warmed Kalian fruit and navigating a ship through a temporal storm. In turn, I told her about Earth, about seasons, the joy of the first warm day of spring, the sound of an orchestra, the taste of chocolate. I tried to explain art, humor, and illogical faith. To her, these were fascinating alien concepts. She listened with an intensity that made me feel like the most interesting person in the galaxy. For the first time, my small life didn't feel mundane. Through her eyes, it was exotic and wonderful. The loneliness I had carried for so long was just gone. As dawn began to lighten the real sky outside, a new quiet settled between us. It wasn't the empty quiet of my old life, but a comfortable, shared silence. Kale's memory was no longer a ghost in the room, but a gentle, peaceful presence. Lyra was free. The heavy mantle of grief was gone, replaced by a lightness that seemed to make her glow. She finally let go of my hand and stood, placing her palm against a section of the wall. A panel slid away, revealing a smooth silver stone. "My ship," she said, her voice in my mind. "A scout pod, small but fast. It's been hidden in a stasis field in the sub-basement. My repairs are complete. I had planned to leave once the rite was concluded, to continue my journey, alone." She turned back to me, the silver stone in her palm. The unspoken "but" hung in the air between us. Her journey no longer had to be a solitary one. The future, once an empty expanse of lonely space, now had a new variable: me. "Aris," she said, and my name in her thoughts was an intimate touch. "I have spent my life charting the physical universe, stars, planets, nebulae. You have shown me a universe I never knew existed, one contained entirely within the heart of a single being." She took a step closer. "I have seen a world with a sky of pure amethyst. I have watched twin suns set over a crystalline sea." She paused, a faint, curious smile on her lips. "But I have never seen a sunrise on a planet with only one sun. I've never heard an orchestra. I have never tasted chocolate." She extended her hand, the one not holding the ship's key. It was an offering, an invitation, a simple, galaxy-altering question. I looked at her outstretched hand, then at the twin moons on her ceiling. I glanced toward my window, at the dirty, familiar gray of my world waking up. I thought of my sterile apartment and the quiet life I had once cherished. The choice had already been made, back in the heart of the ritual. The rest was just logistics. A quiet life or a love that could shatter galaxies. It wasn't even a choice. I reached out and took her hand. Her skin was cool, and a faint, pleasant energy tingled at her touch. I smiled, a real smile that reached my eyes for the first time in years. "I think," I said, my own voice sounding strong and clear, "you're going to love chocolate."